going to say. Okay. All right. You may be a Scorpio with Mercury rising. So this is not this episode of Sales and Messaging is not going to be about astrology per se. But I do recall when I was a kid, a local barber who was an amateur astrologist or astrologer would say, here's what's going on with your sign. But remember, you have Mercury rising and it changes everything. So today we're going to talk about what happens when your ideal buyer persona is a combination of personality types, and you got to start playing some real fast music to keep up with them. But welcome. Let us introduce ourselves since we're off to the races already this morning. I'm Hersh Rephun, your holistic brand therapist.
Dr. Nancy Zare, sales whisperer. And together we are Sales and Messaging Continuum to help you know and sell better. So yes, the clash of the personas, that is our topic for discussion today. And just to set the matter straight, there are almost all the 200 personality systems out there, Hersh, identify 4 distinct styles. They call them by various names, and some of them descriptive, some are colors, animal names, on and on and on. For those of you who know about the likability system, I label the 4 styles using numbers, which is based upon 35 years of research as to how many contacts, touch points someone needs to make a buying decision. And so the numbers, go range from 2 to infinity, actually 2 to 8. Yeah. But all people, Hersh, just like your astrologer friends suggested, are a combination of 4 styles, just in a different amount. And hence that might slightly tip the scale regarding how they present themselves. And we definitely, 30% of the population is very strong in just one style. And no matter whether it's socially or business-wise, they go to that style. And so most personality systems, if you have, bothered to find out about someone's personality style or your ideal client style, you've probably settled in on one. But you're going to be mistaken 70% of the time. How does that sit with you?
That sucks. I don't want to be wrong 70% of the time. I want to be wrong 20% of the time. I can deal with 30% of the time. I probably could deal with, but I definitely would like to be right. 80% of the time would be fair.
All right. So we are a combination of 2 or more styles when it comes to your ideal prospect. Most ideal prospects have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and those 2 styles are kind of glommed together. Hopefully they're compatible, but sometimes they clash. And hence that's why we're going to be talking about the clash of the personas, because within the same individual, there is the tendency to be a spendthrift, to make fast decisions and to, be impulsive and spontaneous. And then there's the other side who is actually very regimented, follows rules, and has a budget. And the same person, these 2 personas can coexist.
Yeah. Yeah. And we could talk all day about the kind of funny situations that can happen. One thing that you did say recently was, well, they are socially a 4, but when they're talking business, they're a 6. So share a little bit about what that means and why you would explain it that way.
So the social 4 is the person who's very warm and personable and chats easily and connects with people, and you probably walk away from that initial conversation thinking, wow, this is just going to be easy peasy because we get along so well. And little do you know that when you then follow it up, and perhaps you've said, you think you're going to do business together, but it turns out their style is decidedly that number 6 style, the one that follows rules. And this is the person who therefore is going to want social testimony. They're going to want to do due diligence and find out who in their network has ever worked with Hersh Rephun, and what do you know about him, and what's his reputation, and does he have a Better Business Bureau rating, and on and on and on. And so hence the faster decision-making style is that social style, the number 4, because they make up their minds in only 2, 3 touch points. That number 4 is because they need one additional after they've said yes, whereas our number 6 is taking a much longer period of time. They're doing their due diligence. And yes, if you are going to get along socially, by all means, talk the number 4 language. But when it comes to making a business decision, you want to proceed in a much more organized, professional fashion, because now that person says to themselves, you get me, we're alike.
And that brings up an interesting point, which is, they say the customer is always right. And I think that maybe applies to their persona as well. In other words, if we understand what they're really like where they're really coming from, then we'll be able to better discern whether they're maybe making a mistake, because we're thinking about what's best for them, right? And if we're thinking about what's best for them, but we're like, you know what? I think they may be over analyzing this deal that I'm putting out there, as opposed to if I said, well, I don't want to manipulate them. They have their reasons. But if I know more about them, and I feel like knowing more about them and how better to serve them, I'm actually realizing that they are doing themselves a disservice. Maybe it puts me in a better position to guide them toward a more thoughtful decision.
Interesting you should comment about that, because I'm thinking about an event that happened about 4 months ago with a client who, out of the blue, said she was considering hiring a marketing guru. And I'm not a marketing person, as you know. I help people with selling. But as she was discussing what her needs were, it was very clear to me that she was falling for that, number 2 seller who talks a good game, very charismatic, promises a lot. It's exciting when you're in their presence, but you're not going to get your hand held. And the client was a very strong number 4. This is the person who really wants a relationship with the seller. And that relationship would never have come to pass. And so, as you suggested, Hersh, I then talked to this person, and I talked to her number 4. I talked to that part in her about the fact that, again, what was she trying to achieve? I certainly could support that. But how was she going to best find the answer? And the answer wasn't with this next hot, fiery, flashy, shiny object that had been presented to her. But instead, she needed, I'm going to suggest, a more analytical approach. And by the way, there are 4 hats, 4 styles. That's what I'm showing. So she needed a more analytical approach in making that decision, rather than to jump into this new product just because it promised all this exciting results.
Yeah. And I think it makes us feel more confident. It's a natural thing to think, okay, well, if I can understand the buyer personas, I can know who I need to sell to that person, enroll that person, and make that deal and move on. But it's also a kind of a holistic benefit where we're just better at whatever it is we do. if we have greater insight into the type of person that works best with us. Now, let's talk for a second about when you have that combo, and that is theoretically the best match for you, but you don't necessarily feel like that's the easiest sell, you know. So it's almost like saying who's the best type of woman for me? Well, it's this 7 foot tall, domineering woman with no sense of humor. That's the ideal mate for you. You know, how do we reconcile the ideal buyer being someone who's going to require a lot of work from us to get that relationship going?
So what immediately comes to mind, Hersh, of course, is our number 8 buyer. This is the person who I jokingly say, turn the 8 on its side, and it's the symbol for infinity. Because
Right.
this person starts with 8 and may go on 12, 20 or more touch points before they make up their mind. But I also share with my clients, and I want to emphasize that once this person makes up their minds, they want things done right away, and their whole network, they have a reputation for being thoughtful, cautious, careful, studious, and so forth. The whole network will follow with them. So is it worthwhile cultivating this as your client? In fact, this may be your ideal client, but then
Mhm.
you need to know what to do to hopefully enroll them. They are independent thinkers, and hence when you put pressure on them of any sort, they balk and they're not going to stay with you. So again, understanding who this person is and how to talk to them matters. Now, you and I actually do like this buyer quite a bit because
Mhm.
both of us have strong intellectual capacity. However, the primary buyer is we want a touch of this for sure, which is the action taker. But the primary buyer that we're looking for is that heart-centered person who's on a mission, wants to make a difference in the world, wants to do something of significance. So when you take these two buyers, and by the way, this one is very emotional, sensitive, feeling oriented. This one's logical, full of intellectual ideas, etc. When you take them into the same person, obviously there's going to be some sort of clash of the personas, right?
That's right.
Who is it that we're talking with? Who do we want to talk with, and so forth. And so again, knowing who your ideal buyer is can give you an advantage in terms of what to say, how to follow up, and eventually how to close the sale.
And the good news is that given that we're talking about your ideal buyer persona, once you get good at that exchange and you start to develop strategies for guiding them through this process, it becomes like any service provider or physician or whatever it might be. You have experience with the quandary they're going through, and you're going to face that more and more often. So it's like anything else. Once you get skilled at overcoming those objections, dealing with the slow deliberation process, dealing with the fallout from a lack of decisiveness, you're going to get better at engaging with those people. And I suspect you're going to start to like that type better, because until that type has an easier time with you and vice versa, there is a little bit of a clash, not only within their types, but between you and your bashert, your ideal mate.
Interesting. Yeah, sales, it's funny because sales is very much related to dating. And there, as those of us who perhaps dating was a long time ago, maybe it's current for you, I don't know. But the person who wants to take you to bed the first time you meet, is that really the relationship you're looking for in the long term? Maybe, maybe not. Certainly, there are people who thrive on, an influx of new people all the time. And so it's, hit and miss, and off they go. They play the numbers game. And for those of you who know me, I teasingly say, yeah, play the numbers game. It's called the likability system. Know the number of the buyer and adjust what you say to match their number. And so for the majority of people, we're looking not for that one night stand. We really are looking for the love of our life. Now, sales doesn't have to be the love of your life, but certainly it's going to, scratch that itch. And so we need to know,
Yeah.
that you've got the right tools, the right intention to scratch my itch. And that, when it returns, you're going to scratch it again, etc. Because I don't know about you, but once I start scratching, I seem to have more of a
Yeah.
surface that needs
More of
scratching.
an itch. Well, yeah, but in closing, I love that. In closing, I would just say that we want a good experience in the end.
Yes.
In the end, we want good, strong relationships that we can return to again and again and get the same satisfaction from. Maybe it's a different problem, maybe it's a new level of business, whatever it might be. But we want those relationships that can be counted on to deliver quality across the board. And so if we can find that, if we can learn how to find that, I think it bodes well for us in the long run.
Amen. So Clash of the Personas, I don't think we've finished scratching the surface. We will probably revisit this topic. We'd love to have your comments and feedback, so feel free. Those of you watching the replay, please let us know. And as we close, to your sales success, it's Dr. Nancy Zare, Sales Whisperer.
And Hersh Rephun, holistic brand therapist, wishing you a fantastic